When we're building a spreadsheet, it is very useful to know that we have a utility that can help us save time and effort when building it. It is the expand pattern fill function. When we have an active cell, we see that it is surrounded by a thick frame like so. That in its lower right-hand corner there is a small little box which, in addition, when we hover the mouse over it, it changes and gives us a little cross. It is indicating that from this point we can expand the pattern found in this cell. Cell A1, in this case, we can expand it to the adjacent cells. Logically, we will show this when we have a value, for example, a text. If we have a text in this position, we select it and we can tell it to expand this fill pattern to adjacent cells. To do so, we have to click or hover over the lower right-hand corner and click with the mouse, and using drag move it without letting go towards the area where we want to expand this fill pattern. We can do this with text, or we can also do it with numerical quantities. For example, if we put the number 1, we can expand it and we can fill the whole area with a numerical quantity, whichever we want. This can be particularly useful in cases, for example, where we have, for example, a numerical quantity we want to increase. For example, if we want to build a table from amounts like 1, 2, 3, etc., we could need to fill in a very large table using this fill pattern. If the increases are constant, building it in this way is not a problem. We select 2 cells where this increment by 1 is already evident. We see that the range of the 2 cells has a single frame here, small. It tells us that this pattern can be expanded down, and with this same increment it will fill it for us. The increment might be by 1 unit or any constant increment. For example, if we want count in 2s. There is nothing easier than putting the first 2 values that express that difference of 2 units and expanding the fill pattern. It is very interesting to know what happens when we have a value, for example, a text value, but for example, a quarter. Quarter 1 is a text value that combines letters with a figure. In this case, quarter 1, if we recall that texts, when we expand them, are copied in exactly the same way. But when letters and figures are combined, we have the great utility that, for example, in this case, we see that it will count in sequence. In this case, additionally, it recognizes that there are only 4 quarters, meaning we can very easily repeat from 1 to 4. If it is a general text, if we put text 1. In this case, since it does not recognize it as quarter, it will count text for the whole of the range that I want to fill with this pattern. It is very interesting to note that it recognizes to expand the pattern, some specific texts such as, for example, quarter, and it also recognizes some others. For example, if I put January in a cell, we see that if I simply without putting the increment, I don't put January and February, but simply January, and I expand it. It recognizes it as a month, and when I expand down, it will automatically fill in all the months. This also happens, for example, if we put the days of the week, Monday. It is very straightforward for Excel to repeat this fill pattern, progressively repeating every 7th cell. We see that in this way, and it is probably very simple in some cases where we have to introduce values, labels in columns, in rows, etc., that we can use the autofill option according to these rules, and we could do so very easily. We should not forget that these patterns can be expanded both down and to the right.